Hey everybody, and welcome to my review of the Triumph Bobber 1200. Thanks to Triumph UK themselves, who lent me this bike about 10 days ago to make some videos in this review on. So obviously I've made the first ride and I've also done a city test on this bike. But basically what I do is I make a series of videos which tests different features and functions of the bike to try and test it in as many different areas as I can to find out what this bike is good at, what it's not good at, pros, cons, all of that. And this is what this video is. I want to keep this simple because this is a simple sort of bike, so let's just start with some key figures. So it's the Triumph Bonneville 1200 2021. It's about £12,000. If you want some extras on there, you're looking at more like 13, 14, depending on how much you grab, but that's what it is. It is a 1200cc, obviously, and it has about 77 brake horsepower and 106 newton meters of torque at 4,000 RPM. Now, 77 brake horsepower from a twin 1200 is not huge numbers, and that's something that I think for some people might put them off slightly, but I really don't think it should, because that power, or should we say the power that this bike has got, with the torque, with the way it is pretty close to perfect. Now, a bobber obviously is a motorcycle which has been cut down, turned back, had everything removed that didn't need to be there, which is why you basically have wheels, an engine, seat and tank. Now obviously we're in the modern times, so you need to have a mudguard on it and you need to have lights and mirrors and things like that, which is not true to what a bobber really is. But other than what the legal things make them put on it, this is very much engine and very little else. So just take a closer look at the bike. As you can see, it's got big twin Brembo discs on the front. These are very good brakes, obviously. This bike weighs 251 kilos when it's wet, so you really do kind of want to have good brakes on this. The lights, although they're pretty retro, are LEDs, same for the headlight. And if we just come around here, you can see the Triumph design has been included in that, in this more sort of classic shaped light. Also note that the clocks, which is just this, has a quick release here that allows you to basically undo that and move the angle of the clocks as to where you want them to be. Easy. This is metal, not plastic, which is great to see, as is the rear. So obviously it's a water-cooled twin that's using the more sort of classic shape, engine shape of like the old Bonnevilles and things like that, which does look very nice. The exhaust system on this is actually quite interesting because the pipe comes out of here, it goes into a catalytic converter which is hidden under the bike there, comes back out here and goes through the exhaust. There is no actual pipe in this piece here. Just be careful because this is hot round here, but this is basically a shroud that covers it. Very smart way of getting a catalytic converter into a bike. Obviously you've got side mounted ignition, as these sorts of bikes do have, and it's very traditional to do that. They've got some nice little brass accents on here, and they've got a little brass looking Triumph plate on the back of the flying seat here, which is like brushed aluminium underneath. This seat is lovely. I mean, it could probably do with a little bit more padding, but that might ruin the design of it. It's not bad for what it is, and it looks lovely. I really do think it looks good. Also, using, I believe it's this bolt and this bolt up here, you can adjust the placement as in height and how far back the seat goes. I haven't done that because this isn't my bike. I'm not going to start pulling it apart, but you can do that. Unlike most bikes, we've got the chain on the right hand side, and you have the rear disc, which is a big old disc for a rear, or at least it looks that way, on the left. You see, even the frame design on this is quite nice, where it thins out into these sort of points to blend everything in together. Yeah, I think it looks nice. This paint job is about an extra 350 quid over the standard black tank, but it is a very nice sort of satin finish. The rear suspension is this single shock underneath the seat here, and I can't actually see any adjustment on that, as in an adjuster ring or a screw or anything. I'm not going to say it's not adjustable, I'll probably have to check that, but it appears from what I can see that it's not. I would say the front suspension is too soft because you can bottom it out and it gives a proper bang if you hit a reasonable sized pothole. But at the same time, the way that it rides most of the time, it's nice that it's softer. Right, I'll just show you the controls and stuff and then we'll get out on the road, because all the facts and figures on this bike really mean nothing. It is about the feel. And obviously that's the hardest thing you can't put that in numbers, you can only explain it, and I'll do my best to explain it to you. So you have the info button here, which basically gives you odometer, trip, average MPG, miles remaining, and the clock, and your rev gauge. Indicators, high beam, low beam, cruise control, horn, kill switch and starter, mode button to change it between rain and road for the traction control, and that is it, rain and road. And then you've got your hazards here, which I have not switched yet, I'll go that way. Then on the display you have your indicator lights, neutral light, high beam, low beam light, you have your speed around the outside, some warning lights across the middle, and then you've got a little LCD that's got a gear position indicator on it, your fuel gauge, and that's basically it. It's very simple. Torque assisted clutch, so the clutch itself is very light. I mean, one finger is not a problem on a 1200cc twin. That's pretty incredible. That is basically it, because this is a simple bike about simple motorcycling. Yeah, it sounds pretty good. It's one of the really nice things about it, actually. Why am I indicating to pull away? Habit. Well, let's first things first. I am 6'4" and about 15.5 stone, roughly. And this bike has actually been really comfortable for me. Even with this flying seat, the seating position is absolutely great. There's no limitations on my leg length, because, you know, there are cutouts in the tank, but it's not too much. And the upright position of it is just, it's very universal, is what I basically say. So as I was saying about the sound of this bike, it is absolutely lovely sounding. It's a very soft but powerful sound. You know, it's very deep down, not overly loud. But it gives the bike real presence, and a lot of people notice it. And I will say that about this bike, and this happens with a few bikes, particularly if they're classic looking. You get members of the public come up to you and just want to talk to you about the bike, and this has had that. Now, I've had several people come up to me and want to ask me questions about it. And interestingly enough, a couple of those were actually, you know, bikers. One of the guys I was chatting to, apparently he owns 22 bikes. He's got an old Bonneville and a few other bits and pieces amongst it. You know, I'm sure he's got some pretty awesome stuff in there he's not mentioning. But yeah, even he likes the modernisation of the old bike. That sound is definitely a big part of what makes this bike so good at what it's good at. And the thing that it's so good at is feel. Enjoyable rider feel. You know, I've done roads that are much faster than this to just see what it was like. And yes, you can ride it pretty quick. You have to be careful when you're leaning the thing over, because you're going to get very, very close to the pegs scraping. But you can get it round a corner pretty damn quickly. It's surprisingly good at that. Even for a 251 kilo bike, because all that weight is very low down. And I should also mention, so is the seat, so this bike is ideal for shorter riders. It just flows from corner to corner, lovely. For 1200 cc's, 77 horsepower is not a huge amount. 106 newton meters of torque from 4,000 RPM is quite a bit, but if you're after an absolute powerhouse of a bike, I wouldn't say this was it, but I like it more for it because I can use the engine on this. You actually can romp around on this. However, that leads me directly onto my second criticism of this bike, which is again not that bad actually, because you can fix it with a new sprocket. And that is, the gearing on this bike is ludicrously long. If you watch some of my previous videos I've done on this, and I assume that if you're really actually serious about buying one of these bikes, you will do that. 70 mile an hour in sixth on this is under 3,000 RPM. In fact, I would say that even on a motorway cruising, you are unlikely to ever use sixth. Now, obviously, I wouldn't want this bike to lose its long gearedness, so you have to, you know, change gear every 2 seconds. However, I would like it to be just a little shorter in the gears, so maybe you can cruise in sixth but have the lower gears for pulling away. But then again, you'll probably find yourself using second all the time to pull away. So it's, you know, it is what it is. It's a criticism, but it's not that serious. You get this bike on a summer evening out in some nice national country speed limit roads, you know, and you just cruise. Smell the smells, enjoy the sound of the engine, I think you'll have quite an experience. This feels like very true, pure motorcycling. I know that sounds like some marketing spiel. Trust me, I will say anything I want about any bike. If I say something, I truly mean it. This bike feels like old school biking. Obviously the purist would go for the old Bonneville, but this, I think it still has a lot of qualities to that. I have ridden an older Bonneville. It was a calf racer and it wasn't, ancient, but yeah. Now, being a 1200cc and only having a 12 litre tank, you do have to fill it up reasonably regularly, depending on what you're doing, obviously, and the long gearing may help with that too. But yeah, you do find yourself, if you're actually riding it for a few hours each day, you're going to be filling it up once a day pretty much. I wouldn't say it was gas guzzling, but it does have a small tank for the size of engine it has. I mean, for example, my DRZ 400 SM has a 10 litre tank, but it's only obviously a 400, well, it's actually a 440, but let's not get into that. Very pretty evening. I know I'm talking about this as a cruising, non-performance sort of bike. It's good at what it is, but it's still very good at pulling off a line, making a good sound, and making you feel good. I should have mentioned earlier on when I was talking about comfort and stuff, having ridden this for a few hours each day, I did start to find that after about 3 hours in the saddle, I wanted to get up and have a little walk around. I have a bit of a bad back anyway. I wouldn't say this bike was any worse than most, but it's definitely got quite firm rear suspension. Again, not as bad as some other bikes, but the seat's so, thin that you don't get much padding. And yeah, I start to feel it in my back a bit, but it's not that bad. But it's worth, I would say, it's worth trying one out and see how you find it. Okay, well, we didn't get to pull off the line, and now I can't see a thing. Oh, this is a terrible idea. I'm still in second. I'm still in second. I'm still in second. Now I'm third. And it definitely pulls when it hits these gear. It really pulls. Oh, come on. You've got 4 wheels. Come on, clear path. Give me a clear path, please. Yes. Thank you, person. Appreciated. I was only doing 70. See what I mean? It's got eventfulness, it's got power, it's got presence, but it's not stupid speeds. Now you open up a 1000cc sports bike in first and second. It's pointless. You can't go that fast on the British roads. Okay, hang on, let's get it into 6th so you can see this. Okay, 60 miles an hour, 2,550 RPM. If I try and accelerate, it will do it, but it's got a bit of a rumble. 5th, still got a rumble. 4th, bit of a rumble. 3rd, there we go, that's where you want it to be. So as I say, although one of my criticisms earlier on is this doesn't have as much power as you might expect for a 1200, as you've just seen, it is enough, but it's not too much, to the point that it's pretty perfect. I mean, yeah, sure, okay, honestly, maybe if it had 100 brake horsepower, that might be a bit more like what I would maybe expect, but it's a twin, and it's got a ton of torque, and that's, if you want something with super high brake horsepower, well, then don't go for an engine which is known for having torque. I don't think necessarily a lot of that matters. If you want this sort of bike, it's probably got a lot to do with maybe the looks or the style or even the heritage or anything like that. It's not about the performance figures, it's not about all of that stuff. It's been interesting as well, actually, while I've been doing videos on this bike, I've had some pretty big sections where I've just I'm not going to say got mesmerised and I'm not paying attention, I'm kind of super focused on riding, but I'm just enjoying the whole experience, like listening to the engine, feeling the road, smelling everything. It takes you away from everything. And you can obviously get that from any motorcycle, but I think part of it comes from the ease of riding this. You're not changing gear or anything like that. If you've got this sort of bike, you're not looking to get around a corner scraping knee or scraping peg necessarily, unless, the feeling takes you, in which case it is a lot of fun to do. Car's going a bit slow. And that's partly why I say this bike to me feels like pure motorcycling. It feels like a pure escapism. It feels like exactly what motorcycles were supposed to be for. Well, okay, motorcycles weren't necessarily supposed to be exactly for that. But you know what I mean. With the way that people see them now, it's generally about escapism. This sort of bike isn't really what you're going to use to commute. You could definitely commute on this, if you know, and you could even do a bit of distance on it. This is what it's about. Enjoying the country you're driving through. You know, if I know this, as I say, the type of seat on this isn't ideal as a touring bike, but I feel like on something like this, you're not going to go as fast and you're going to see more. You know, you're going to actually pay attention to the road. You're not looking at the bike or worrying about what mode it's in or whether it's this or that. It's the bike, it's getting you around, it's moving you, it's a moving chair. You know, in the way that when you're travelling by train, there's just something a little bit different about it, about the way that you take in the place that you're going, because, you know, there's windows you can get to look at, you get to see the country around you. Okay, this might be a bit idealistic, because I'm thinking back to when I went on old steam trains in somewhere in the UK, I don't know where. It might be the Watercress line. But yeah, you just felt like this is just an enjoyable journey. And that's what this bike does. It makes enjoyable journeys, even short ones. As I say, lots of other bikes do that, and this might only be something it does for me. But if it does it for me, it can do it for some of you too, I'm sure. This is what I mean about showing this bike in its best light. The evening light just makes this thing look beautiful. All the little bits of chrome pop, the black is nice and subtle. You get this sort of nice warm satin cast across the paintwork and the shininess and the other plastics. Not plastics, sorry, fairings, because they're made of metal. In fact, hang on. Well, that one's metal and that one's metal. Is this one metal? No, that one's plastic. Okay, fair enough. Oh, something I did forget to mention, which was worth saying, because it could be a bit annoying. I mean, I live with a DRZ, which has got this exact setup, but basically there is a key in the frame head to be able to lock the steering lock on, because the ignition's down here. They're not connected. As I say, I have a bike that's set up like that. It's old school, it is a bit annoying, but it kind of is the way it is because of the way the bike is. Oh, I should also mention, of course, sorry, the bar end mirrors. They do actually work. There is a bit of vibration in the bars, quite large sort of vibrations, not high-pitched ones that come with having a big twin like this. But they generally work quite well. They don't make the bike any wider. They kind of aren't as bad as the up ones here, but I could see a lot of people taking these off and just relying on doing shoulder checks. But yeah, they do work okay. I honestly see this as the perfect bike for someone who wants to ride a motorcycle for all of the feel of it, all of the escapism, the joy, the exploring, the adventuring, all that sort of stuff, and maybe even, you know, some sort of throwback history to what we had before. It's nice to see that even at this point we are referencing back to the true early days of motorcycling, and you know, when things were being innovated and created by the people that rode them to make those bikes do the things that they wanted more. Yeah, I think that gives you my conclusion on this bike. It's really nice. Thank you very much to Triumph UK for lending me this one. Please remember to hit that like button, I'd really appreciate it. If you really are looking at getting one of these, consider watching the other videos I've done where I was doing all of the testing that's made me come to the conclusions that I've come to. I don't just say something without testing it. That's why I spend an entire week, 10 days testing and trying and experiencing for myself. And if you want to help support this channel so I can continue to do this, then please consider joining my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. I would really, really appreciate it. I'm very soon going to hit 100,000 subscribers, and at this point in time, 0.3% of the audience make this channel possible. It really is that important. Anyway, catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.